Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast. You heard our podcast of GP Plouay yesterday. Go and check that out if you haven't listened to that already. I'm here with my co-host, Benji Naesen. You know us both from YouTube. I'm from the Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel. Benji is from the eponymous Benji Naesen YouTube channel. He covers Pro Cycling Manager gameplay, but he probably knows more about cycling and who's in the pro peloton than just about anyone else in the world, I think. I'm here in Brisbane. It's 12:30 at night, and we're just getting this Tour de France preview done. Where are you calling in from, Benji?
I'm calling in from Belgium. It's 5 p.m. here right now. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for the kind words you've introduced me with because, yeah, I do follow cycling a lot, but it's always fun to hear that.
We got no Wedu sponsors. We don't have a sponsor thing to fill in right now, so we're going to get straight to the preview. It's going to be long enough as it is. Maybe save this one if you're going for a long ride, a long drive. You got no friends with you. Download it because we're going to get stuck into this preview more than anyone else is going to. We're going to go stage by stage. We're going to talk about all the dominant teams and what we think is going to happen in this year's Tour de France. But first, let's go over the start list. In fact, I'll just tell you the favourites are for GC. So for the overall general classification, this is in order of favouritism. And I'm doing this by the current betting odds. They're the fairest arbiter of favouritism. Obviously, in Germany, people think Buchmann is underrated, and maybe in France, people think Thibaut Pinot is higher rated than he is. But as an objective measure of who's favourites, Roglic is favourite. He has about a 33% chance of winning, implied chance. Bernal is just behind him, the second favourite. He's been given about a 28% chance of winning. Thibaut Pinot, third favourite. A big gap between Roglic and Bernal. We're going to talk about this as potentially being a two-horse race between Ineos and Jumbo-Visma, but that's borne out in the current odds beforehand. Thibaut Pinot has got about a 9% chance of winning, and then that's just in front of Tom Dumoulin, who's been given an 8% chance of winning. And then fifth favourite, newly recruited into the Tour de France, ripped out of the Giro squad, Richard Carapaz, about a 6%, 5.5% chance of winning. And then Tadej Pogacar, 4.5%, 5% chance of winning sixth. But they're the real six favourites. There's then a big gap to Alaphilippe and Buchmann, each with about a 2.5% chance of winning respectively. And Sivakov, Landa, Quintana, Miguel Angel Lopez, Daniel Felipe Martinez, Sepp Kuss, they're all in the 1% sort of chance of winning. So very, very big outsiders, perhaps bigger outsiders than we'd really think. Benji, hearing those odds, and the odds are what they are, what's your initial reaction? Is anything really surprising to you? Do you think someone is grossly underrated or overrated for their GC prospects?
When it comes to the names we've already heard now, I've got the feeling that we obviously have to look at Ineos versus Jumbo firstly, because those names are the big hitters when it comes to the last month in cycling. I do have the feeling that we shouldn't focus too hard on these teams only because there are some parties that would like to take the victory here as well. You said it, Buchmann, but I'm also naming some names that might not be so easy to think of at first. We had a Tour de France last year, and with a bit of luck, well, with a bit of strength, Alaphilippe came into yellow in the first week last year. I personally have not seen too much of Alaphilippe in the Dauphiné and such, but we can never look past him after what he showed last year. Names like that can really surprise, and it certainly is a parkour that suits him personally, looking at the first week for sure, but we'll go into that later. Next to that, there are some younger names like at EF Pro Cycling. We just had the Dauphiné winner, Daniel Felipe Martinez. He can certainly show something as well. Honestly, it's one of the more open Tour de France's we've had in years.
Guillaume Martin, I didn't even mention him. I can't even see him. He's 450, 500 to 1. Now, he doesn't have the team to realistically contend for the Tour de France, nor is he really a top 5 climber either, but he can certainly be up there with the GC guys, spicing things up. My personal view is I don't have a personal view because going through these names, just updating you all, and I think it might be useful for everyone to have the full context of what we know based on public information of people's health situation. Primoz Roglic, stage, 4 of the Criterium du Dauphiné, crashed. Bad road rash, concussion-like symptoms, according to Wout van Aert, his teammate, and according to Primoz Instagram the other day, his recovery was not going as quickly as he expected. So For me, there's actually quite a big question mark over the condition of Primoz Roglic. I think at the very least, his preparation will have been negatively affected. When he won that stage 2 of the Criterium de Dauphiné, I was ready to call the Tour de France GC. I thought there's no way anyone can contest with both his strength as the strongest rider and being on the strongest team. But that crash, also on the same day, his teammate Stefan Kruijswijk crashed, dislocated his shoulder. He's out of the Tour de France. The day before that, Egan Bernal, or maybe it was that morning, I can't remember, at the Dauphiné, Egan Bernal pulled out with citing back pain. Now, I think that might be kind of fake news, given that he was seen training that morning and there was no chance they were really going to contest GC, but still a question mark nonetheless. Thibaut Pinot, he crashed, I think, on that stage, but no real question marks over him. Tom Dumoulin coming back from an injury. He hadn't raced in 420 days before this season restarted. But he has looked good, and he looked good in Stage 5 Dauphiné, but still, how will he go in a 3-week stage race? Richard Carapaz crashed in Tour de Pologne, had to pull out, or he was at least hurt more than just a mild bit of road rash at the Tour de Pologne, and he just got pulled out of his preparation for the Giro d'Italia and sent to the Tour de France for Ineos. 5th favourite, so there's 2 question marks for him. Tadej Pogacar, no crashes or anything of that nature, but maybe hasn't been as dominant as I expected him to be. Emmanuel Buchmann, quite a bad crash in the Dauphiné. The same one Kruijswijk had been involved with. There's still a question mark over whether Buchmann even starts. That's a lot of question marks. I've just gone through pretty much all of the GC favourites, and it's a bit of a shame, but I thought that's where everyone's at. Maybe we could get a really bizarre winner if all the cards or dominoes fall and a lot of riders are injured and Roglic pulls out. It could make the Tour de France even more open than it is. But anyway, that's the main GC riders. Just looking at the main sprinters in the race, obviously there's Caleb Ewan for Lotto Soudal. Dylan Groenewegen obviously isn't going, but he never was going. What do you think, Benji, and I heard this in some people on Twitter talking about this, what do you think about Groupama FDJ not taking a sprinter at all and leaving Demar at home? Apparently that's what they're doing.
I find it extremely odd, certainly because Demar's showing extreme strength at the moment, winning both the French NC and also a few stages in the Tour de Wallonie and eventually the GC as well. He is really in form. I think he won Milano Torino as well, but I'm not 100% sure of that.
Yes, he did.
Next to that, his lead-out train is absolutely crazy right now. They are so good at bringing him to the front at the exact right moment. Next to that, I've got plenty of sprinters on my list, to be honest. There are so many sprinters that can do well here, but I've got the feeling that it will most likely be Ewan that is the shining person in these sprints.
I agree. That's what I like to hear. And it's such a hard profile. We really only have 2 of the top sprinters in the world, Ewan and Bennett. I have in my the top sprinters is, I'm not sure if you have a different view. I've got Ewan, Gaviria, Bennett, and Groenewegen. Correct me if I'm missing anybody. And Demar as the 5th now. I'm now putting him in that category. Elia Viviani, he is at the Tour de France, but his lead out now, Cofidis, he has shown nothing this year that really excites me. So it really is 2 top tier sprinters, and Lotto set up completely around Caleb Ewan with the goal of getting him stage wins, and obviously De Gent and Gilbert maybe going for breakaways. And De Koning not taking a full lead out train for Sam Bennett. And then there's a really big drop off to the riders like Colbrelli, Elia Viviani. Are we going to see riders almost like Clement Venturini getting top 5s, or, Matteo Trentin's not shown too much this year? So do you think it's a weak sprint field as a whole? And do you think it's too weak? Do you think teams have overreacted to the profile and they're going to actually miss out on potential sprint wins? Or do you think it is too hard for a lot of the pure sprinters like Gaviria?
I think we've got 4 or 5 pure sprint stages that I do see the possibility of a sprinter winning, but I think one of those at least already has hills, and there are other stages that end in flat paths, but certainly have a lot of climbs that will most likely defy a sprint. I am noticing that a lot of teams are having sprinters at the start that have the ability to climb somewhat. I would have said that about Caleb Ewan as well. I'm not sure at the moment. Milano Sanremo was a bit of a moment for him, in my honest opinion. I'm sincerely doubtful what you think of Sunweb not taking Matthews here because KS Bull,
Oh, don't
I
get me
don't
started.
think he's gonna get over many climbs, although I hope it for Sunweb, but yeah, go ahead.
I mentioned this at the time when Sunweb announced their team, and it's almost a meme at this point. And you've set me up to be triggered already. We're only 10 minutes into this preview podcast, but if there was ever a Tour de France where a rider could really contest the green jersey and break Peter Sagan's dominance of it. I know Matthews won in 2017, but Sagan was kicked out of the race. This is the year for it, with Sagan not looking in the best shape of his life. Also, Case Bowl, you mentioned he's not going to get. He's not going to be contesting these sprints. Any stages with a bit of a hill in it, even stage one. Case Bowl's not going to get top 10 in that stage, and there's no way. They don't even have that great a team around him. Yeah, Casper Pedersen, but it makes no sense to me that they didn't take Matthews. It's not like he's leaving the team next year. He's still on the team. I thought this looked like a perfect Tour de France for him, and instead you're going to see riders who are like the Michael Matthews light, a worse version of him, Giacomo Nizzolo, who is looking fantastic this year, just won the Italian National Championships, but Michael Matthews is better than Giacomo Nizzolo. You got to adjust the sliders there for Matthews, and I think we're going to see Nizzolo's going to actually be getting top threes in stages, at least.
And I'd also like to add someone. We haven't spoken about a rider that is supposedly destined to ride as a domestique, but could honestly compete for green if he tried, after what he did on the first stage of the Dauphiné and throughout the whole month of August, pretty much. Wout van Aert. Honestly, I, as a Belgian, would be pretty sad if he doesn't even try to take any proper sprint stages. He said that he's interested in trying to go for it on the Champs-Élysées, but I believe if he tries to go for it on stage one, or even if he can somehow survive stage two the same way he did at the start of the Dauphiné, then that is possible, but we'll get to those stages soon enough. What do you think about Wout van Aert at this Tour de France?
If Roglic is not in great condition at the start, if Roglic doesn't start, they have to ride as priority 1A, Wout van Aert green, priority 1B, Tom Dumoulin yellow jersey. I think you then have to balance up. Yes, yellow jersey is more important than the green jersey, but Wout van Aert maybe has a 50. If we rode for Wout and let him go for green, he probably has I would say a 50 to 60% chance of winning it. Whereas Dumoulin has maybe, without Roglic, 12 to 15% chance of winning yellow. So I think they should really, if Roglic isn't in great condition, let Wout have some liberties if Roglic is still there, and take the pressure off Roglic as well in that first stage. I don't see what the harm is in letting Tony and Hessink and Amund Grondal Janssen, who is quite good on the flats, and he actually was working for Wout as his last man at Milano Sanremo on the Poggio. I think they should work for Wout in that first stage. Get him in yellow, take a bit of the pressure off Roglic, who I think would appreciate that as well. But yeah, that's what I think Jumbo Visma should do. And I think if they let him ride the green jersey, he'd be my pick over Sagan. He's outclimbing Sagan by far at the moment.
And honestly, I think the best next step we can do here is take a look at the stages because we might as well name everybody at the moment because there's plenty of people that have an opportunity for stage wins, but these stages have some extremely special format in the sense that it's looking more like a Vuelta. Don't you think so as well?
Yeah, that's a good point. Let's get. I just mentioned stage one. Let's talk about stage one, which is indicative of how Vuelta like this Tour de France is, and we're gonna keep adding our thoughts in here and there. But we've mentioned that the main players. We'll talk about our picks for yellow, green, King of the Mountains, and Young Rider at the end of the podcast. But now we're going to use the stages as a backbone to really get into this preview. And stage one, indicative of the entirety of this Tour de France. 156 kilometers long. So got two category threes, 6 kilometers at 5%. They do 2 laps of the Côte de Rimier, and then a finish in Nice. So it starts in Nice, finishes in Nice. And I remember Caleb Ewan, I think he lives in Nice or Monaco. Pretty sure he does. He was doing a recce of this, and he I think he joked on Instagram or Twitter or something about, hey, what the hell, ASO or Tour de France? This ain't the normal stage one sprint stage. This has actually got some some climbs in it. And I think that is what this Tour de France is. It's a hard first week. So how do you see that first stage playing out? Will it still ultimately be a routine sprint?
I think that it might be more of a sprint than we are expecting. I'm going to dare to say that they're not going to push on it because I don't see who would be benefiting off of this outside of, for example, if Jumbo really puts it on Wout van Aert, but they probably won't do that because they'll be focusing on Roglic, I would say. Because I don't expect them to put their men up to get Wout van Aert a victory here.
Exactly. What's going to happen? Asia Dual Mondial are going to commit their whole team to try and set up Cosnefroy or Venturini to make it hard enough for them, or Bahrain McLaren, are they going to be strong enough? It's not hard enough for the likes of Colbrelli and Cosnefroy and Venturini. I just don't think the climbs are too hard. Philip Gilbert, if he wasn't on Lotto Sedal and he was back in his heyday, maybe he does something, or I don't know. But it's the first stage. I don't actually expect too much to happen, to be honest. No one's really going to be incentivized to over the top of the Cote Remier then another 50 kilometers. Yeah, sure. There might be a B&B Hotels or Total Direct Energy rider has a flyer, and the peloton gives him a minute and a half. But no, I think it's going to be a sprint. And whilst I don't think it'll be won by a rider on those climbs, yeah, I think a rider might be dropped. One of the sprinters might be dropped. What about Connor Swift? Team Arkea Samsic have brought him instead of Nasser Bouhanni. Does he climb any better than Nasser Bouhanni?
I don't see him really doing anything for the sprint properly, so I wouldn't even write him down for that day at least.
So my pick is Caleb Ewan wearing yellow after stage one.
I'm gonna dare and say that we're gonna have a surprise winner and that Giacomo Nizzolo is gonna win this one.
Okay, well, you've picked one of my favorite riders, so I can't disagree with you. So that's stage one. Giacomo Nizzolo winning his first Grand Tour stage one of Tour de France.
Finally, after the last one was taken so horribly in that Giro way back.
He got disqualified. Yeah, stage two. Now this is. I think David Milao was talking to him on an ITV preview, and he was like, "This stage is like they forgot this is the Tour de France and said it was actually the Vuelta." Stage two, Nice to Nice again, two Category 1s and a Category 2. They do Col de la Colmienne. Within the first, they start that at 45 k's into the 186 kilometer stage, 16.3 k's at 6.3% average gradient. Now the intermediate sprint, for Peter Sagan's benefit, is actually in the first 16 k's. So if the intermediate sprint had been after one of those Cat 1s, that would have suited Wout van Aert. But I think Sagan will be, all the sprinters will be there for that intermediate. They then descend into Roquebillière, and then they start the Col de Torini, 15 k's at 7.5%. That's not an easy climb, and then they've got about 86 kilometers to go. And then they have a Category 2 Col d'Ez, 8 kilometers at 6.1% average gradient. And then Col de Quatre Chemins. Do you think anything can happen on that climb with about 10 k's to go?
I do think so. And I actually feel like this stage is just a combination of Paris-Nice, in my honest opinion. We've had the Turini in the past in Paris-Nice, Compiègne as well. We also had a lot of Col d'Ez time trials there. So it just feels like they put the whole Paris-Nice history in one stage, which I really love. We've got the Col de Quatre Chemins, like you mentioned. And I believe that we might see potentially an attack of Alaphilippe on that, in the sense that I really think that this would fit him. This reminds me of that stage that he attacked together with Pinot. I think that was last year
Yes.
and they took bonus seconds or something. I believe that Alaphilippe will take yellow on stage two.
I think three French riders will attack here, and I think Pinot can't help himself with attacking, and I actually think it'd be a good place for him to try and put some pressure on Jumbo Visma. He doesn't have as strong a team as Ineos and Jumbo Visma. He's got to take opportunities, particularly if Roglic is not in great condition in that first week and just working into the race. Take some opportunities to gain time on Roglic, because he's probably not going to put time into Roglic. No, he will not put time into Roglic in the time trial. He will lose time. So we have to always remember when we're looking at these stages, but from a GC perspective, keep in the back of your head stage 20 Plongsta belty time trial, which suits Roglic and Dumoulin and does not really suit Bernal and Pinot. All things being equal and normal, injuries aside, Dumoulin and Roglic will be putting time into those other two riders. So if Roglic isn't looking good, perfect stage like this, Benoit Cosnefroy, does he attack with Alaphilippe and Pinot on that little rise? Great opportunity for those guys.
I also have a other name selected for this one, in the sense that I think this stage would be perfect for him, but he did crash in the Dauphiné and has not really shown anything decent since that crash, and that was Sergio Higuita. I feel like this is also the kind of stage that is for him. I don't 100% remember his downhill skills. It's also not the steepest downhill, but I really believe that this kind of finish is good for him. And next to that, I believe that he's got still that bit of anonymity when it comes to the real Tour de France. He's been good at, I think it was La Vuelta last year. And I've got the feeling that the peloton might actually allow him to, well, not allow him to ride away, but might not directly respond in compared to, for example, a Pinot attacking or an Alaphilippe attacking. So I've got Higuita written down here depending on how good he is after that crash.
I think this stage will be too hard for even semi-sprinters that can climb like Colbrelli. It'll be too hard for them. And yeah, maybe it's. I hope that there'll be attacks from maybe even Pogacar, Pinot, and Co. I don't really have a firm feeling on who will win, but I think the category ones will actually be ridden conservatively, and there won't be too much happening on those category ones. And then I think people will try and launch on those last two climbs for stage win into Nice.
There's a team that we have not mentioned even at all, and that is Movistar. And on usual occasions in the previous years, we would obviously point out Fulvade every single time on a stage like this, but this year he's really not shown it. And it's closing down to the fact that he's obviously getting older, but you can never really write him down because he won the World Championships while being relatively old in the sense of being a pro cyclist. Do you expect something of Movistar as a team because they have Enric Mas and Valverde?
I'm not expecting much from Valverde. He looked a lot off the pace at Dauphiné, and I'm not sure what his training's been like during lockdown, but I'm not expecting him to come out all guns blazing in this stage two. I'm expecting Valverde to be largely anonymous for at least 10 days and then just try and get into breakaways and then try and be the strongest rider in one of the hard stages in a breakaway and try and win a stage from there. But yeah, he won't be contesting GC, and I don't expect to see him in this week one. But stage three, again out of Nice to Sisteron, the entirety of this Tour de France is pretty much in the southeast of France. Another rolly stage. This is classified as a sprint stage. Christian Prudhomme's comment is the riders are inspired by the perfumes of grass as they leave the Nice area. They will then ride along the Route Napoleon with far less obstacles than the ones witnessed by the Emperor. The flat final part of the stage shouldn't trouble the plans of the sprinters' teams. Okay, that's nice of you to say that, Christian, but let me read you the climbs. Col du Pilon, 8.5 Ks, 5%. Straight into the Col de la Fée, 5.5 Ks, 5%. Another category, that's two category threes. Third category three, Col de Leg, 7 Ks at 5.5%. And then there's a little category four as well. And then there's the intermediate sprint at Digne-les-Bains with about 40 kilometers to go. So, not the easiest sprint stage and a false flat uphill finish. Do you think this is still ultimately going to be a sprint stage?
I believe it's going to be a reduced bunch going forward. I don't expect a breakaway to already shine through on these fast stages. I've got the feeling that there's too many teams in the peloton that will try and do it for a sprint still. And definitely the teams that have hilly sprinters, we've got a few on the menu, like CCC's here with Matteo Trentin. We've got Peter Sagan, obviously. He might not overly have the team because everybody will be supporting Bookman, so I don't know how that will really go. I don't know about Ewan. I'm not sure if he can survive this. Depends on, yeah, the pace, I guess. That's obvious.
Yeah, it all depends on the pace they do the climbs. Yeah. AD will have the team committed to bringing him back. I guess you know who I would pick to win this stage if he was riding this race? Ivan Garcia Cortina. He won a similar stage, didn't he, in Paris Nice? I remember that was a nasty Paris Nice stage. I would really like Garcia Cortina in this uphill false flat sprint. I think it could be quite a hard stage. Or if they were riding for him, I'd just pick Wild Fun Up. That's my simple answer. I know we try to be really smart and get cute with it, but ultimately I think Wild Fun Up could win this stage too. But we just don't know to what extent he will be really holding all his cards close. I don't really see a problem with Jumbo Visma if there's no GC issues, letting him sit on the back of a Lotto Sedal and Taconi Quickstep train and having a crack at the sprint. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have any issue with that, or do you think they won't even let him do that?
I think if he is in the peloton, then he most likely will be allowed to go for it. That is what I would expect, at least, because a pro team should not really just give up on a potential stage win for one sprint of effort, I think. Next to that, I'm not a sprinter, so I can't really expect to say how much a sprint influences the next days of domestiquing, so I can't really say much about that, but I believe that you can recover from that from just an extra sprint. As an addition, I would dare to say that I would go for Peter Sagan here. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because I hope that he finds somewhat of a form in this Tour de France because he has really brought cycling a level higher in the last 2 years. Well, quite a few years back already, but I believe that I should hold a bit of hope that Peter Sagan has something to show, and I think it's going to happen on this stage.
Yeah, and yeah, he doesn't look as good as 2015, 2016 Peter Sagan, granted. But if any of these stages is too hard for Sam Bennett and Caleb Ewan, he's next in line then to become, he has to be the favourite for that stage then as a sprinter. He's probably going to have, Postelberger, Oss, and Großschartner helping him. Not the best, but it's not too bad either. Those are really experienced guys, and they do put him in pretty good position. Alexander Kristoff, we haven't mentioned him. UAE will be bringing him apparently. I haven't seen too much out of him, and yeah, I'd be surprised. If this was 2015, 2014, yeah, I'd be saying this could be a stage for him, but I haven't seen too much out of him. Stage 4, I'm not sure if you're looking at it, Benji. I know I'm butchering the French pronunciation, and you're going to do a lot better job than me. It's said as it's an altitude finish, a bit of a mistranslation from Christian Prudhomme. It's a mountaintop finish, or it's a hilltop finish, 1,800 meters altitude. Orsières Mallet, they're finishing a Category 1, 7.1 Ks at 7%. Not the hardest climb, but not the easiest stage either. Quite a hard day for stage 4. Again, the intermediate sprint is before all the climbing starts, so Peter Sagan will be pleased to see that. I don't think too much will happen on this stage.
In general, I believe that, yeah, it's going to be quite a fast finish in the sense that the last climb is not overly steep. So I believe it's going to be quite a fast ascent of that climb. I believe that it's a perfect finish to do a Roglic train like we saw in the Dauphiné, to just set it up and have him sprint the last kilometer, because that's basically what happened at the Dauphiné on a similar finish. Do you believe that something like that is possible, or do you think that the stage is not hard enough to pull something like that off?
I think if he was on fantastic form, yeah, I'd be picking Roglic, and I'd also be picking Carapaz in top 3 as well in this stage. I really like Carapaz in a finish like this. I just think it could be much more interesting than the Dauphiné, which was just Jumbo Visma train, Ineos train, where Jumbo Visma will want to control the race, but they'll also not wanting to be putting their own leader Roglic under massive pressure with stage 4 of the Tour de France, after he's just been posting on Instagram, 2 days ago, that he's, he's had his first ride outside, and we've got a week, we've got 4 days until the Tour de France. So I don't know if Roglic is looking fantastic, stage 2 Dauphiné form. Yeah, Jumbo-Visma are going to light it up. They'll go Wout van Aert, Hessink, Dumoulin, Bennett, Koos, you name it. They could absolutely destroy this, but I don't know if they'll want to. So I actually quite like Carapaz for this stage.
One thing we haven't really thought about around this stage is the fact that there's also the possibility of the breakaway winning, obviously. Is there enough incentive for the GC guys to go for this stage? Because I've got the feeling that this might just be a breakaway victory because there's just not that much incentive to go for it yet. You don't want to be in yellow in the first week, I would guess, unless your name is an Alaphilippe, because that seems to boost him quite a lot when it comes with motivation and his strength. So I feel like it might also be a breakaway win, and if I had to put a name on it, then I would dare to say someone along the lines of Thomas de Gent is obviously one of the names that you could name, but I'm not sure about it. I feel like a third week stage might fit him more. Maybe an Anspeters.
Pierre Latour, Davide Formolo for UAE. Will UAE let Davide Formolo get into the break, or will he be restricted to helping Tadej Pogacar? Adam Yates, Mitchell and Scott are going only for stage wins. They've said that. Adam Yates, Daryl Impey might be a little bit hard for Impey. Esteban Chavez. Yeah, I agree. I feel bad for not mentioning that. If you're Jumbo Visma, I'd let the break go all day. I'd let the break go if it doesn't have anyone, and just try and have as chill a day as possible. If I'm Ineos, I let the break go because Egan Bernal is not gaining much time. The amount of energy they'd have to expend to gain time on this stage, and they probably wouldn't end up gaining any time. It's not hard enough. So what's the point in really controlling proceedings? Even if that back injury was kind of faked. The only reason I would see Ineos lighting it up is if they've got some sort of read on Roglic that he's really struggling, and then they obviously would put the hammer down. But apart from that, why not let the break go?
And honestly, one stage that I don't expect the break to win is stage 5, because I believe that that is a perfect finishing point for a hilly sprinter.
I love Venturini and Cosnefroy. I'm just going to keep picking them. Honestly, again, Wout van Aert could win this stage. Wout van Aert could easily win this stage. I'll keep repeating that too. But if the break is up the road, and Jumbo Visma don't even have Roglic in the team, and the break is 2 minutes up the road, then of course Tony Martin will pull that break back and work really hard to set up a Wout van Aert sprint. But if if Benoit Cosnefroy is a minute up the road, or Thomas de Gent, probably more likely than Benoit Cosnefroy, then Martin with Roglic there, they're just going to ride tempo. So yeah, I think it will be too hard for the Ewens. I don't see Ewan as being in the condition to contest this. I think the climb will be too hard.
I've got the feeling that this finish in Privas kind of reminds me of the Bielsko-Biala stage in Tour de Polonia, where I think Kwiatkowski won there. Do you think that a Kwiatkowski could have an opportunity here, or do you think that he's going to be too focused on the GC of his team?
Do Ineos ever let their riders do that? I can't remember. Can you ever remember Ineos Sky rider getting a chance for stage win in Tour de France? Usually when they put their riders in a break, it's strategic for GC purposes. So, yeah, I don't think, just like with Wout van Aert, Kwiatkowski's got the handcuffs on. Stage 6, our second mountaintop finish for the week, although it flattens off for the second half. Mont well, correct me, Benji. Benji, tell me how to pronounce that correctly.
Okay, tell to Montegual.
All right. Listen, most of the people that listen to this podcast are probably not native French speakers or speak French, so they're just as bad as me. So I don't want to hear any Apple Store reviews. By the way, go to Apple Store, go to Spotify, give us a 5-star review so we can keep this going. I don't want to see any reviews unless it is 5-star complaining about my pronunciation. But this stage is 191 kilometers long, another stage just under 200 Ks, flat for 155 Ks, and then there's a couple of lumps, couple of category 3s, capped to cost 2Ks at 7.5%. Again, the intermediate sprints before any climbing. And then we've got the Col de la Luzette and finishing with Monteguel. So it's a Category 1 into a mountaintop finish. The Category 1 Col de la Luzette is hard, much, much harder than the actual final climb, 12 kilometers long at 7.5%. This reminds me a little bit of that Primoz Roglic stage that he won in 2018. Now, I know that was on a descent finish, but this reminds me just because it has a climb with quite a hard climb, then a false summit, and then a short descent, and then another sort of long drag. But I think this really suits Primoz Roglic and Jumbo-Visma, to be honest.
The last portion is not exactly very steep. So if you get over the Col Luzette part, then you've basically survived the last portion. After that, there's a bit of a false flat to the line that is, from my guess, around 3-4%. That is what I would guess. Might be less even. I am expecting that a breakaway wins here. I am not sure about who can do that, but if Lutsenko is allowed to go for a stage, I believe that this stage would fit him.
Yeah, Lutsenko, I mean, he's looked very hot and cold since the return from lockdown. He got dropped much earlier than I expected, I think, in either Tourmaline or Criterium de Dauphiné, especially for a man who was not very far behind Nairo Quintana in the climb from the Mont Ventoux to Chalet Renard climb in February. He came, I think, third in that stage, and he got dropped very early there, but then he has looked okay in other stages. So yeah, he could be a man for this. Alaphilippe, again, depending on what he's trying to do. With Alaphilippe, the problem for Alaphilippe this year is I don't think he's going to get this. He's not going to get the same leash, and I don't think the GC teams are going to allow him as much license to go off and do the things he did last year in the first week, just because of how close it ended up being at the end of 2019 Tour de France. But Domenico Pozzovivo, I mean, if he's not going for stages like this and trying to get into the breakaway, then what's the point in him
I don't see
being
Domenico Pozzovivo doing anything this Tour de France.
You're out on Pozzovivo?
I'm not against him, but I have seen him at Bahrain steadily going down when it comes to his strength, or at least his performances. And honestly, I was a big fan of him the moment that he was fighting in that Giro against Hershey quite a lot of years back. And I think this is not going to be a year where he is at his best for a potential GC nor for stages. He just doesn't have the finish, in my honest opinion, and certainly not on a finish like this. If it was pure climbing and on an actual climb, instead of a 4% like last 10 kilometers or something, then he might be able to drop people. But on a 4% to the finish, I don't see that happening from Pozzovivo, honestly.
Guess how many World Tour races Pozzovivo has won in a 15-year career?
2.
3.
Ah, damn it. Which ones?
It's crazy. It's crazy, isn't it? Stage in Tour de Suisse, stage in Giro, and he won. I can't remember the other one, but yeah, he doesn't win a lot of races. But maybe speaking of other riders that could go for this, who I think if they're not going for this, don't even turn up to the start line. Dan Martin, as well. I mean, honestly, Enric Mas should be trying to get into this break because he ain't contesting GC as well. But yeah, I'm not really sure what riders will be thinking.
Personally, as a Belgian, I always have to name Thomas de Gent just in case it happens because he's gonna select one stage and do it. So I basically have to name every single stage that it's possible to be sure that I named him at the stage that it actually happens because he has the ability of selecting a stage that is basically different than the last 10 he won and still do it. So I don't know. What do you expect of a Mark Hershey? Because I've got the feeling that he's shown really good strength in the climbing itself in the Dauphiné. He was always there in the last 15 to 20 riders. And I've got the feeling that a finish like this is perfect for him, honestly. He's got the climbing skills to get over that with a group of relatively good breakaway riders. And he's got the finish. We've seen it before. I believe that a Mark Hershey could win stages like this.
For sure, he won 2018 World Championships road race. under 23 ahead of Bjorg Lambrecht, and third was actually Jaakko Heinonen, who's looked very, very strong. And obviously, Bjorg Lambrecht, I don't think people realize how good a rider he was going to be. So yeah, Hershey, very strong rider. He actually came third in Classic at San Sebastian last year. So, he's got that punch you're talking about. I know when I've been speaking to Sunweb, they're very, very high on him as a prospect. He's only 22 years old. I think this is his first full year almost in World Tour level. Yeah, he should be getting into breaks. So should Nairo, to be honest. I don't think he'll get the license to, but I don't think Nairo's winning this. I don't think Mikael Landa's contesting it either. So yeah, a lot of people should be trying to get into this break. If Bora Hansgrohe can't bring Emmanuel Buchmann, do they send Leonard Kamner in every break that looks, on every day that has a Category 1 climb in it? They should, and we saw what he can do in Dauphiné. Okay, stage 7, Milao to Laval. In the areas of Aveyron and Tarn, where one doesn't quite know what flat means, the roads are never easy. That's what Christian says, but this looks like a pretty easy day to me. I think this will be a bunch sprint with all the big names. Yes, there's a 15k climb at 4% average gradient. That's just like what's the climb up to the motorway in Milano San Remo? That shouldn't bother Bennett or Ewan one bit. There's a Category 4 climb, 1k at 7% average gradient as well, the Côte de Polo. But that's about 70 kilometers from the finish. And I think if someone like Ewan or Bennett lost 10 seconds there or 8 seconds there, their team would be, more than capable of bringing them back before the finish in Laval. Do you think there's going to be a bunch sprint?
I am actually thinking that it's going to be a mass sprint because I've got the feeling the climbs that are in that stage are just not hard enough to really put pressure on these sprints. I believe this is one of these stages that has the ability of actually becoming a mass sprint. Do you think differently or?
No, it's going to be a bunch sprint. So we'll move on. Stage 8, we've got 2 Category 1s and an Hors Category climb, Porte de Ballet, and then there's a Category 1 Col de Perasud, which you probably have all heard before, 10 kilometers at 7.8%, and then descent into the finish at Ludenvielle. So this kind of looks like I've already mentioned it, the Primoz Roglic 2018 stage. I'm not sure how technical that descent is off the Perasud. Do you know off the top of your head?
Persuade is always kind of technical. I think it's also, I'm not sure about this. This could be very wrong, but isn't this the same descent that Froome attacked on a few years back in 2016, 25, 15?
Yes, he attacked off the Perasud. I'm not sure which side though, but he did attack off the Perasud in 2016 when he put time into Quintana.
Yeah, I believe that this is also just kind of a perfect stage for a breakaway. There's not a lot of downhill descending stages that are won in the peloton, in my honest opinion. We sometimes have that happen, but usually it is won by breakaway riders, one or two surviving just ahead of the elite group that has survived the climb. Quite a few of the elite group. Sometimes there's a gap, sometimes not. Kind of reminds me a lot of those Giro stages. This format of 3 climbs and then a downhill to the finish line happens a lot in the Giro, more than in the Tour de France, if I recall correctly. We had one of those stages last year. I don't remember which one. And I don't know, I've got a feeling that there's going to be a sole breakaway rider taking the victory here. And I might put my money on a rider like Alaphilippe or something, depending on how well he survives in the breakaway. There could be quite a few other riders that have the strength of surviving that, but yeah, it depends on whether they're allowed to do it or not, and whether their GC is still active or not. If, for example, a rider has lost 10 minutes in the first week already, in the first 2 stages, because of some bad luck or something, mechanical before that, the second stage, the last climb or something, then you might see someone that has lost time trying to get into the breakaway already at this point.
Yeah, so for the sake of this preview, I'm just going to assume Roglic is in pretty good health at this point. I think this is the perfect stage for Jumbo Visma to put pressure on Ineos. I'm just imagining right now the climbs will probably be too hard for Amador, And that descent, if Roglic has got a gap, if Roglic is able to attack in that last kilometre of the Col de Persud, and I don't even know how. This doesn't work with Dumoulin because he's not a fantastic descender. We saw that because Roglic dropped him in that 2018 Tour de France stage on the descent. But yeah, this would be a great place for Roglic to put Bernal under pressure. And yeah, I think Bernal is not on the level of Roglic as a descender. He's an okay descender, Bernal, but Roglic is probably one of the best in the world and maybe the best GC descender in the world. And there's bonus seconds as well. I think there's 8 seconds at least for first place each stage in the Tour de France. So those seconds add up, especially if Roglic if he is in good form and he's beating Bernal to the punch in each hilltop finish. Pinot as well probably gobbling up second, Carapaz third. If Simon Yates was at this Tour de France, I'd love to put money on him as well in a stage like this. But he's not for some reason. But yeah, I think that 11.7 kilometers at 8% second climb just would seem like a fantastic place for Jumbo Visma to isolate Bernal, because who would be able, if they really put the hammer down, who would be able to stay with the Jumbo Visma train? I'm talking if they got Bennett, Kuss, Dumoulin just cranking it for Roglic on that climb. Well, I think Carapaz would get dropped, honestly. I don't think he'd be able to hold the wheel. I think Sivakov would barely be able to hang on and wouldn't be that much used to Bernal either. He wouldn't be able to bring back an attack. So if Roglic is feeling really good, if I was Jumbo Visma DS, I'd just be super aggressive on that climb. And given the condition of Kuss and Bennett, I would try and get multiple Jumbo Visma riders clear, like they did in Tour de l'Ain. Get multiple Jumbo Visma riders clear with Roglic and Bernal and just bully him. And this seems like a decent place to do it, but maybe that's a pipe dream. What do you think? Is that beyond the realms of possibility?
I believe it's certainly possible. There is the ability to do that. They've got the team for it. It will obviously depend on how strong that team is at this point in the race, but that's something we unfortunately can't predict with the amount of crashes we've seen at this point. Let's hope we don't see any of that in the first week of the Tour de France. We have a different kind of stage the day after. That is stage 9 on the Sunday from Port to Lorraine. And honestly, it is a bit of a transitioning stage. We've got a pretty flat run in, 1/4 cat climb at the start, but that's most likely just for show for the KOM. And then we've got a proper climb in the middle, that is the Col de la Houssière, and also the Col de Soudet after that. Those are some relatively significant climbs. 11.1 kilometer at 8.8% is that first one. The second one is not that long, only 3.8 kilometers, is basically going from one climb to the other and then dropping into the downhill. Towards the end, we've got 2 other climbs with about 35 to 40 kilometers to go. There's a small third cat climb that most likely won't influence too much. But with about a solid 20 kilometers to go, we've got the Col de Marie Blanc, which is 7.7 kilometers at 8.6%. I think that a breakaway will win the stage, and I'm going to put my money on Thomas de Gent because I've got the feeling that this stage fits him more than the ones I've been naming him for so far.
Yeah, I agree. This stage fits him more than I think you mentioned the mountaintop finish. It could be Roman Bardet. We've not even mentioned his name yet. We're an hour into this. We haven't mentioned the guy who's got on the Tour de France podium before Roman Bardet, because he's not even in contention for GC. If he's not in contention for GC, he could do well in a breakaway here as well. He'd probably be able to climb better than most of his breakaway compatriots. So if I was actually to do a Le Mondial, I'd be sending Bardet in the break in this sort of stage. And yeah, descent into the finish, and then a flat section for about 8Ks into the finish. But yeah, hard day the day before. I think it's going to be a breakaway win, although there's a rest day afterwards.
Yeah, it's true, but I've got a few names that I would like to name for the stage still. I believe that a Tish Benoit could be potential play. Søren Krogh Andersen, depending on who they choose at Sunweb for this kind of stage, because they both would kind of fit to do this. Dumoulin doesn't have the real finish. Krogh Andersen could potentially do that. Nonetheless, Greg van Avermaet also seems like a person that I'd put on this. Daryl Impey, those kind of names. Maybe a Trenton, but Trenton has shown that he can climb quite a bit if he is in the breakaway, but it is quite climby towards the end on that Mont Blanc, so I'm not sure if he can stick with proper climbers on that one in the breakaway.
I mean, Trenton is the Tour de France. He found some unbelievable climbing legs last year. Him and Simon Yates, I seem to remember in a breakaway together. Maybe it was the year before, but yeah, I wouldn't count Trenton out. I think that looks a little bit hard for him at the moment for where he is in the season. I think that 9%, 11K long climb at the start would just, he'd be losing at least a minute to riders like Hershey, Bardet if he's there, and the other riders you mentioned as well, and Thomas de Hent. Then we got the first rest day on the Monday. I'll be taking a big rest. I'll have been live streaming for over a week straight. I'll be making videos for ITV. You'll be making stage previews, I presume, on your channel on PCM.
Don't say that with a laugh.
No, Siri just came up on my screen. That's why Siri keeps thinking I'm talking to her. Stage 10. I think me, you, Ned Bolting, every man and his dog has now marked this down as a potential crosswind stage. It's by the sea. They're crossing marshlands, which are swept by wind. 170 k's long. It looks flat on the profile, but yeah, anything could happen. This is 2020, but I still think it'll be a bunch sprint, to be honest.
I believe as well, but I hope that it's going to be a reduced bunch sprint. I always loved that stage in Zale on the few years back, but I just hope that we see something like that once again. And hopefully it's this one, but it might also just disappoint, which I don't hope it does. I would put my money on a Kristoff or something. This is the kind of stage in the Tour de France that he has something to offer, unlike quite a lot of the other ones. I believe that this is one that he can actually do something on. I don't know. I've got the feeling that there are quite a few names you could put on this because it could go either way. It could go pure mass sprint if there's not enough wind, but if there is enough wind, then we will basically see a massacre, I think.
My pick is Peter Sagan because he could win either of the two. If it's bad crosswinds, he could get into the first echelon. If it's same with Wout van Aert though as well. Again, if Jumbo Visma let Wout van Aert ride for himself in crosswinds, we saw in Paris Nice. I think he was on the front, created an echelon of one for a while in Paris Nice in the crosswinds there earlier this year. But my pick is Peter Sagan for this stage, either bunch sprint or not.
I've got two teams that I think will try and make this an echelon business. And that is firstly the Cunning Quickstep, obviously. They are one of the gods when it comes to using the wind to their advantage. But I've also noticed quite a lot in the last year that Trek Segafredo with Mats Pedersen and also with the likes of Stuyven and such have been using that to their advantage. I'm not sure about Mollema and Porta and their skills of using the wind to their advantage, but if their team focuses on it and has Mats Pedersen and such really focusing on the stage, I've seen Pedersen create echelons on his own in the last year, so I believe that that team could really show something here as well. Lotto Soudal has Gilbert, who won echelon stages in the past, but I've got the feeling that the team surrounding him will focus all out on Ewan on this kind of stage to try and make sure Ewan survives and could potentially take this one, even if it comes down to an echelon stage.
And if you're Richie Port and you actually want to get on the podium in this year's Tour de France, you're not going to beat the list of 5 to 6 GC guys we've already mentioned ad nauseum on this podcast. You have to do something different. And looking at the way his team's set up, Edward Turns, Jesper Stuyven, Tom Skirns, and Mads Pedersen. From memory, Mads Pedersen did a fantastic job for Richie Port in Paris Nice in crosswinds. This would be a stage where, if I'm Port, yeah, he's probably not that good in crosswinds, I'll grant you, but just say, let's try and put some pressure on Bernal and the South American, half his team is South Americans. Is Castroviejo, yes, good time trialist, but he's not a big guy. How good is he in crosswinds? I know that Sivikov and Rowe and Van Baal are normally pretty good in crosswinds, but Sivikov's lost 6 kilos since Cadel Evans road race. So if I was Port, I'd be encouraging them to do something like that. But yeah, we'll see what the wind is like for that stage. The next stage, stage 11, pure sprint stage again. They come off the coast, no real climbs. There's a category 4, but this is, at least it's only 167 k's long, but it'll be a bunch sprint, I think.
I think that there's a small, tiny hill in the last kilometers. I think in the last 5 kilometers, a very tiny hill. Peloton might not be too worried about it, but I don't know. It could influence the mass sprint and potentially get some people out of position and could lead to a bizarre finish. I do think that it's going to be a mass sprint, and I'm just naming Caleb Ewan here. This is perfect for him.
If FDJ took the Mar and Jacopo Guarnieri with this, if you look at the last 5Ks of this stage, I'd be picking them. I think they'd smash it up that hill and from 3Ks and then put De Koning and Caleb Ewan under a lot of pressure and isolate Kluger with Ewan. But that's not who they brought. So, yeah, Caleb Ewan is my pick.
What do you think about Lotto Soudal's train compared to the Koenig here, for example?
I think Lotto Soudal's train is much stronger.
Yeah, I've got the feeling that that is certainly the case, mainly due to the fact that I've got the feeling the Koenig is only at the start of the Tour de France with relatively half a train.
They couldn't pick Shane Archibald because I think if you watch, I think it was in Burgos, maybe the stage that, if you go and watch closely, I wrote an article about it. The Burgos stage 2, which Gavidia won, when FDJ swamped a Koenig train, Archibald couldn't pull through. And that was what really caused Bennett to be out of position. So I don't think Archibald was really in a condition to get around this course, but I might be wrong. But it was surprising he didn't get picked. All right, let's get wriggling. Stage 12, Chauvigny to Saran Colles. No altitude. You guys have probably, and girls have not heard the word altitude spoken for over an hour now, and that's because there really isn't too much altitude in this Tour de France, which will suit Roglic, Pinot, Buchmann over someone like Egan Bernal. This is another kind of transitional stage. Looks like a breakaway stage to me. There's a category 2 with about 30 kilometers to go. I think this is the longest stage of the Tour de France. Yes, it is 220 kilometers long. My pick is Philippe Gilbert from a reduced breakaway.
I believe that is very much possible, but I would like to first take in what you said earlier about the fact that this Tour de France parcours is really limited in the amount of real altitude. And I think that's something we've seen over the years that Prudhomme, well, he obviously doesn't make the parkour just himself, but ASO really tries to focus on getting Alaphilippe an opportunity this year. If he had the form of last year, but I think that's not the case. If you look at previous years in the Tour de France, they already try to make it less TT kilometers to try and get Bardet and Pinot a bit more of a chance. I don't know. I'm a bit of that conspiracy theory that it's always a bit towards the French when it comes to the parcours, because this year it's so obvious. It's made for Alaphilippe, just to the bone. All these stages have potential hill finishes, downhill finishes. Honestly, that's my opinion on that. But when it comes to the stage, I would expect the breakaway to take it. But when it comes to a name for it, I would not directly be able to say someone, maybe a Stuyven in a breakaway, but I think those last 2 hills will be a bit difficult to get over for him. So I might dare to say, well, I don't know how to pronounce his name properly, but the guy at Trek, Niklas Egg, apparently it's something like Niklas I in Danish.
Yes, I've been corrected for making a mistake before.
I believe that I want to see Roland win a stage here after his great form in the Dauphiné, but I don't think it's going to be this
No,
one yet.
no. He might go on that cat too, but it ain't happening. Pierre Roland is not winning a stage this year. But yeah, I agree with what you said about Julien Alaphilippe. I mean, I feel like we've been trying to throw out different names for people, but at the end of the day, Julian Alaphilippe, if he's on form, could rack up three or four stage wins. This once again is perfect for him. There's descent finishes in other stages, but then this stage with the finale and the Category 2 in the last 30 kilometers, I say Philippe Gilbert just to throw a different name out there, but yeah, he is looking a bit older and he's not a quick step anymore. Again, Benoit Cosnefroy, possibly Thibaut Pinot, even I mean the last kilometer is an undulating finish, and maybe you're right about Alaphilippe, and that's why, as you just said in the previous stage, Quickstep have brought more rouleurs than pure sprint train, and they want to have riders like Asgren and Trijstevenens to control a breakaway to really set up Alaphilippe for a finale like this. You know who else could win this stage? Richard Carapaz. If he can win that Giro stage, he can win that Tour de Polonia stage, uphill drag. He can definitely win this stage too.
I have a few names that we haven't really named yet. We've not focused at all on Bahrain because we all kind of expect those riders to go in support of Landa. But riders like a Mohoric and such could really try something on this stage. A Bilbao. I am not sure about a Caruso. I feel like he needs more climbing for that. I also wanted to name someone else, but I've lost him for a second here. Well, you named him. I think that we saw, I think it was in the Vuelta, Asgreen winning a stage that was also kind of hilly. So he's also come, I think, second or third, or was he the winner of the American race?
Tour of California, he came third on
Yeah,
GC last year, and he won a stage.
he can
And he
climb,
came second in a stage
and
last year. Oh yeah,
I'm gonna
for sure.
change it. Asgreen wins stage 12.
Okay, okay. I don't know why they didn't bring Cavagna. Maybe that would have made them too climbing focused. And Asgren's just got that motor. They need a Stibar to maybe help out a bit more in the sprints. But yeah, there's so many people that could win this stage. Igita maybe might not be hard enough for him.
Yeah, then we've got stage 13. It is, to me, a bit of a breakaway stage, or potentially, yeah, I think it's going to be a breakaway stage once again, but we can say that with all the stages that have this kind of parkour. Let me introduce it for you. We've got basically a parkour with plenty of hills among the parkour, but no real insane climbs throughout it. And we finish on the highest climb at the end of Puy-Marie. There is 7 categorized climbs in this one, 6 among the parkour. Seventh one is the finish, and they're all roughly about 3.5 to 10 kilometers. Most of them are about 4 to 5, and they are all around 5 to 7%. There is one, the Col de Néron, that is 9.1%, and that is the one that is just before the finish line, as in the last climbing section of the race kind of looks like 2 climbs just behind each other, and the Col de Néron is the first part of that climb, of that finishing climb, and then we've got the Puy-Marie being the second part of that. I could be very wrong on that, but I recall this being some kind of volcano that they were riding towards, or a volcanic area they were riding towards, so that's pretty cool. Kind of hyped about that. One thing we haven't talked about is those B signatures you see on the profiles. Those are those bonus points on these stages. We haven't really talked about them too much, but we've had them on the last stage as well, on one of the last hills. But I think this is the stage that really shines through as an opportunity to use it.
Wait, what are they? What are they? What's that be?
The B is the bonus points. We had them last year, where
Wait, seconds or KOM points?
seconds.
Really? Hold your horses. I didn't know that. Okay. So at the end of the hardest climb of the day in terms of gradient, they've got bonus seconds up for grabs. I mean, again, 4K is at 9.1%. We're going for Roglic. Inform Roglic probably, but it's not that long a climb. Get Alaphilippe.
The thing is, we've said a lot about these stages so far that it's really tuned towards. There's a lot of just hill stages, in my honest opinion, and that makes me really doubt whether it's going to be a GC guy or whether it's going to be a breakaway guy. I feel like this stage is made for the breakaway if it is in the tour, but in the Vuelta, this would be a GC stage, which is difficult because this feels like a Vuelta parcours in the Tour de France. And I've got the feeling that this is going to be still a breakaway stage. There are so many uphills and downhills that it's going to be really tough to control the race. There's going to be plenty of people that want to try and take a victory here. And the big mountains are to come in the last portion of the race, last portion of the Tour de France. So I think it's going to be mainly just breakaway riders trying to get this Primoy stage.
If you're wearing the yellow jersey, you want to let that break go and just be able to ride tempo up these not so hard climbs. Whereas if you're all coming into the base of, you've got a short descent before the Col de Neron, if you've caught the breakaway and then you're wearing the yellow jersey, and maybe if Egan Bernal is wearing it, even if Bernal for some reason is wearing it, and then you've got that steep climb where maybe his teammates can't help him that much, bonus seconds up for grabs. Then suddenly he's got Pinot, Alaphilippe, other riders attacking him, trying to get those bonus seconds, and then maybe even carrying it on to the stage finish as well, and getting more bonus seconds at the finish. So if I was wearing yellow, I'd let the break go, and I wouldn't be too bothered about bringing them back. Stage 14. This is just another hilly stage into Lyon. Not as hilly as the previous one. We've got 3 Category 4s, 1 Category 2, and a Category 3. The biggest climbs are in the first half of the stage. Col de Biel, 10.2 Ks at 5.6%. The Côte de Corroux, 4 Ks at 5.7%. That shouldn't bother people too much. I just want to make a note. I didn't mention it in the previous stage. Wout van Aert could luck into the green jersey. If they at least let him go, they probably won't let him go for the sprint on this stage 14, because the intermediate sprint is before the first Category 2 of the day, and you'd be thinking that Wout van Aert, based on what we saw in the Dauphiné, would be the person making that long pull for Jumbo-Visma at the base, starting from the base of that climb. But the previous day, I think Sagan will be dropped. If there's no breakaway, Wout van Aert lucks into those intermediate sprint points. But this stage as well, it could be a breakaway. It's not hard enough for GC for there to be anything really happening on GC. But Ineos or Jumbo-Visma, I'll let the break go. But there's a Category 4 climb in the last 5 or 7 kilometres, the Côte de la Croix-Rousse, 1.5 Ks at 5%. Nothing too disturbing. Yeah, I think someone like Sagan can get over that pretty easily.
I am going to name 2 occasions, in the sense that I'm going to name a rider that I think that can do well here for breakaway. I think Matej Mohoric would fit here. I don't know, I don't feel like it's going to be an all-out sprint here, but the annoying thing about these stages is that you would be able to name breakaways as a finish on every stage here recently, because they're just so well made to have breakaways win, because the peloton, well, the sprinters will have a hard time getting over the Col de Biel. You've said it.
But there's nothing to be gained from GC. There's no hard climb in the latter third of the stage that makes it any incentive for Ineos, Jumbo-Visma, or whoever's wearing yellow to really control things and set a hard pace. So, you've got that in the first 50 Ks. You've got a nice Category 2 climb to just set the breakaway up for the day. It just seems set for the breakaway again. Now, everything can change. We could look like idiots at the end of the day, because the race situation might completely turn things on their head. Alaphilippe might be wearing yellow, or whoever, but on paper, again, looks like breakaway. I think Giacomo Nizzolo is my pick for this stage, actually. If it's not a breakaway, sorry, Giacomo Nizzolo. If it's a breakaway, I'm not going to name the 20 potential riders that could win.
Yeah, that's roughly about the same opinion as I have. When it comes to stage 15, we have basically the start of the madness. We've got a stage from Lyon to the Grand Colombier. This is a relatively exact copy paste of the stage that was in. Was it the Dauphiné or was it the Tour de l'Ain?
Dumoulin.
Tour de l'Ain, okay. We've got 3 climbs in it, and it's basically running towards the middle of the stage, completely flat. But then we start off with the climbing. 2 climbs, that is 2 fast guide climbs. First of all, the Montée de la Selle de Fromentel, 11.1 kilometers, 8.1 percentage. Then we've got the next climb just after that, Côte de la Biche, 6.9 kilometers, 8.9%. And then we've got a plateau of around 14 kilometers, 13 maybe, towards the Grand Colombier, the final madness of the day, 17.4 kilometers, a massive climb of 17.1%, 1,501 meters high. One of the highest we've been to so far, I think, if I go up in these stages. But yeah, it's basically the start of what I see as the stages that GC is going to happen at. I believe that this one's going to be a GC favorite taking the stage.
For sure. And if we see the Dauphiné Roglic with the strength he has at Jumbo Visma, he wins this stage and he puts time into Bernal, in my opinion. And I think on the first climb of this stage was where I looked at Chris Froome's power data, and he did okay. They did a pretty good time actually on the Monte de la Selle de Fromentel in the Tour de l'Ain, but I think Jumbo Visma are going to really put Bernal under pressure here. And yes, I like Ineos' team. I think they've sent the best team they can, but at the end of the day, who's going to be able to climb with Koos, Bennett, and Dumoulin? Like, name is Carapaz climbing at the level of Sepp Kuss right now on climbs like this, on a stage like this? I don't think so, based on what we saw at Burgos and Tour de Polonia. I like him as a punchy finisher in stages where the VAM hasn't been insane, but yeah, I think this is the stage where we're going to see Dave Brailsford mentioned it, I think, or implied it at least in when he announced the Ineos team. I don't think we're going to see the Ineos trains set up like they did in Dauphiné Stage 2, because that'll just be setting themselves up for disaster. I think they're going to ride defensively, and it's going to be up to Jumbo Visma to try and tear the race apart. I think they got the team to do it. Hopefully Roglic is in good enough condition, but yeah, I think Roglic wins this stage.
I think we need to make sure we don't tunnel vision too much on Roglic either. Although obviously he's the head favorite for this kind of stage, I believe that Buchmann, despite his crash earlier on this August, that he is still one of the favorites for the Tour de France, in my personal opinion, for top three at least. And I think he's got a good team for it. We've got Mulberger, Kemna, Grosjean. Those are people that can very much climb if they are in decent form. And if you look at that final climb, it looks like more of a Roglic terrain, mainly because it flattens out a tiny bit towards the finish line. So it fits that typical attack he did at the Dauphiné. At the Dauphiné. And I don't know, I feel like it might just be that kind of finish, but I don't see him dropping Buchmann or Pinot on the climb itself. I believe that he's going to entrust himself on his last kilometer once again.
Well, I think the overall colour for Roglic in the Tour de France is, well, I'm going to beat Pinot and Buchmann in the time trial, most likely, in stage 20. Just pick up 3 seconds here, 5 seconds there on Buchmann and Pinot. And I think those guys will actually be close to his wheel, particularly Pinot, and probably Carapaz too in some of the other stages. But I think he could be gaining 10, 12 seconds on an isolated Bernal per stage, maybe even more. So he doesn't. When I say Roglic is the favourite for the stage, I don't think he's going to attack halfway up the climb and put 2 minutes into anybody. I just think he's going to win the sprint to the finish. To be honest, and do you think? What about Quintana? We haven't mentioned Nairo, man. Can Nairo do anything on a stage like this? It's below altitude. It's probably not going to be a breakaway. GC guys will be really focused on it. I think he'll be there, but I don't think Nairo will be contesting the stage win here.
I don't have much confidence in Quintana, and it's basically because I don't believe he's up there with a Buchmann, Pinot, and a Roglic and a Bernal when it comes to climbing. In the past, he was. He was great in the past, but I just don't see it happening. I've got the feeling that he needs to lose time to be able to get a stage win. Otherwise, it's going to be really tough for him to do much.
Yeah, he has to strategically almost just lose 20 minutes so that he's allowed to get into breakaways. I don't think he's even climbing. he's not even climbing as well as Richie Port right now. Richie Port looks pretty good. I know it's a meme at this point. I mean,
If he
this is after
survives
stage
stage
9.
9.
Yeah, is this, will Richie Port even be here? But Port's probably riding better than Quintana right now, and Port's not even top 5 GC guy. So, yeah, Quintana is not going to get a leash to go here. But yeah, that goes into the stage 2, or the second rest day rather. After stage 15, quite a hard second week. A lot of hills, just a lot of climbing in that second week, but not a lot of no altitude at all, and not a lot of HC climbs, but just a lot of climbing and a lot of difficult decisions. I think all those stages, and I feel like I was struggling a little bit to say, well, it's going to depend on the race situation, what's going to happen. I think there's going to be hard decisions for DS to say, do we chase, do we let the break go, what can we get out of this stage? Stage 16 into the last week of the Tour de France. One of those stages similar to the ones I was just talking about. No altitude, 2 category 2s, a category 4 at the start, which might let the breakaway, the breakaway is going to go there in that first category 4, and then not a very difficult category 1 climb with about 30 kilometers to go. It crests with 30 kilometers to go, 11.1 Ks at 6.5%. A false flat descent for about 12 to 15 kilometers, and then a perfect finish for Benoit Cosnefroy or Julien Alaphilippe, 2.2 Ks at 6.5% average gradient to Villard de Lans. Good. What do you think? I don't think this will be a breakaway. I think this will be a reduced bunch finish, and because Quickstep will want to set up Alaphilippe for this stage.
I don't see them being able to control the race because we're in the third week. People will attack with like 20, 30 people sometimes in stages like this to try and get potentially an endless breakaway of like 14 people in the end. But I've got the feeling that this is going to be a breakaway stage.
Yeah, I think Jesus Harada is a nice pick for a stage like this. Getting loves getting to a breakaway. Did he come top 3 or win a breakaway? A similar finish in the Vuelta last year, if my memory serves me correctly. Yeah, I agree. Now I think about it, if you're wearing the yellow jersey, or if you're Ineos or Jumbo Visma, you want to let that break go. You want to let that break gobble up the bonus seconds. The climbs are not hard enough to really gain any time on GC. We've not mentioned any climbs that are long over 8% gradient this entire Tour de France. It's all steady gradient climbs where having someone to draft behind will make a big difference. So again, not sure who'll win that stage, but you think it'll be a break? I think it'll be a reduced bunch.
I've got the feeling that we haven't really focused on EF too much. I believe that Martinez is a top 5 favorite in this Tour de France. Somewhat with the elite guys, but not really totally yet. I don't see him winning the Tour de France, though. I believe he can get fourth or fifth in this Tour de France. But next to him in that team, we've got Uran. I don't expect anything from Uran, even though he has shown real consistency in Grand Tours that he contends. When he doesn't crash, he shows that he's consistent and he is up there, but he's never really up there with the big guns. But Higita, man, this is a stage for him to the bones, in my honest opinion.
Yeah, Igita. Another guy we haven't mentioned for that team, Hugh Carthy. He won that stage at Tour de Suisse. Pure climber. Could he, probably not this stage, but yeah, if there's a really mountainous stage where he gets in a breakaway, it could be one for him. Well, could Tom Dumoulin win? What happens if Roglic is out? Imagine if they send Dumoulin out, they'll probably be riding for him on GC, but yeah, I'm actually expecting Dumoulin to really perform and be putting a lot of people under pressure, even in stages like this, if Jumbo Visma decide to.
Do you expect Tom Dumoulin to peak in the third week?
Yes, I actually do. I actually do expect him to peak in the third week, even though he's not on Ineos. Other riders not on Ineos have found ways to peak in the third week, but I think the racing will all suit him. On the 5th day of Dauphiné, he was looking his best he has yet. But yeah, it depends on how hard it has been for him in the 2 weeks preceding that stage. But the next stage is the deciding moment for Egan Bernal. And this, we might spend a little bit of time on this stage. Stage 17, Grenoble to Col de la Loze. Highest point, the Souvenir Henri Desgranges, which is for the highest altitude point in the Tour de France. Mountaintop finish, Hors category climb, 21.5 Ks at 8% average gradient, finishing at 2,304 meters. It's it's 170 kilometer long stage, but it is preceded by the Col de la Madeleine, 17.1 Ks at 8.4% average gradient. In years gone by, this is just pure Ineos train, and then setting up Egan Bernal to go on the steepest part. And I believe there is a steep part of Col de la Loze. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, at the end it gets quite steep. If you look on the profile, there's some 18% pinches, apparently a 24% pinch. I'm not sure if I believe that, but the last 3-4 kilometers, average 11%, 10%, 10%. So altitude, Bernal, I still don't think it'll be enough for him.
I would hope that it is enough for him to be strong enough to see a real spectacle here. Because this is the stage where I would be expecting that. This isn't the kind of stage that I would kind of compare to the Tourmalet stage where Schleck and Contador fought each other. It kind of has the same format in the sense that there's a climb in the middle, and that is the Madeleine. Beautiful downhill, then the plateau section towards that last climb. But yeah, I believe that this could be a real spectacle, but it depends a lot because Jumbo Visma has really shown their strategy the last two races they rode, and the strategy really closes down the race. And I hope that someone finds a gap in that strategy, not because I'm against Jumbo, but because that might show more spectacle on these kind of stages.
Okay, so on this stage, say it won't happen, but say Roglic and Bernal are neck and neck. They're each on the same time on GC going into this stage. How much time does Bernal have to gain on Roglic in this stage, given that stage 18, which we'll get to properly, kind of looks like another breakaway stage, no altitude, although it does have a steep climb in it, and then stage 19 looks like a transitional or breakaway stage, and then you got the time trial, which Roglic is, all things being equal, going to put time into Bernal in. What's a win for Bernal on this stage, and what's a failure? Obviously, if they come in at the same time, not a success. But I even think 45 seconds or a minute is not enough on Roglic, and that's a lot if Roglic is in good form and Jumbo Visma have been able to control the race before it really hits the over 2,000 meters altitude.
He still needs quite a bit to stay ahead of Roglic towards that coming time trial, so he will need quite a bit of an advantage. But the advantage that he has, I think, is that we've seen Roglic kind of evaporate in races before. Obviously, it might have been due to conditions in the race in that Giro where he lost time towards the end. He crashed and also was apparently sick in that second week. I do feel like when Roglic decides to die down, it happens quite quickly that he loses a lot of time. So I don't know. I've got the feeling that if Bernal finds a way to break Roglic, then he might be able to take quite a lot of time quickly, but it will be hard to get like 2 minutes or a minute and a half even on this climb on Roglic because, yeah, if he's in good form and Bernal's also in good form, then we're going to see a spectacle and it's going to be hard to predict who takes it against the other person.
And a lot of people criticized Nairo Quintana over the years for not attacking Ineos from far out, and it's kind of similar. The cards have kind of reverse card. Now it's Bernal, the Colombian altitude specialist, having to attack the time trialist turned climber Primoz Roglic, but gaining 2 minutes. 2 minutes is a lot. Col d'Izarin goes to 400 meters higher altitude than Col de la Loze. Remember, Bernal only, quote unquote, he put 2 minutes into Alaphilippe last year over the top of Col d'Izarin, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think 1 minute into the Thomas group. And Alaphilippe was fucked. Like he you could see he was like a fish out of water at that high altitude. He was like gasping air all over the bike, although he's kind of always all over the bike. Um, and Bernal only put 2 minutes into him. So I don't see how, unless Roglic cracks completely, and this isn't high altitude. Yes, 2,300 meters. It is altitude, and it makes a difference. That 300 meters over 2,000 meters, but it's not high altitude like Col d'Iseran or even the Galibier. So yeah, I don't see him putting more than a minute into Roglic, if that, to be honest.
We might see a bit of tunnel vision that we currently have disappear on this stage because we're focusing so much on Bernal and Roglic here now. I would not really count out Pinot Buchmann at this very moment. Buchmann, if he is okay when it comes to his form in the Tour de France, then he certainly can show stuff on this stage. I'm going to tell you that I believe that if Roglic or Bernal get beaten by another rider, that this stage is going to be really decisive in that. One thing we haven't really talked about is the fact that we might already have a lot of gaps because of the hill stage, not necessarily because of the parcours, but hill stages really bring nervousness in the peloton because everybody wants to be at the front for every hill. And we might see a lot of trouble there in the sense that, I don't want to say it, but people might crash beforehand. And we might have GC favorites that are way behind on this kind of stage that have to really push it forward and attack very early on these kind of stages already in the last week because they still want to bring something to their GC or to a stage win. So yeah, it might be very different than we are expecting right now because right now we're taking on this discussion as if everybody's in the same time for this stage, but I think we're already going to have loads of gap before this stage even starts.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, whilst we have spoken about it as if it's going to be Roglic and Bernal head to head, probably chances are that doesn't happen. And it could even be Bernal defending a 4 minute lead in this stage to Pinot. It could be Pinot wearing the yellow jersey with no teammates having to defend attacks left, right, and center on this final climb. And I'd love to see that. That would be fantastic.
It could be
Um,
Israel Startup Nation's Guy Niv in yellow, 10 minutes above everybody, fighting it off.
get the fuck out of here. Yeah, so I don't know what will happen. I just know that if all things go to plan and Bernal and Roglic and the other favourites are close, Bernal and Ineos, this is their stage, and they have to do something there. But then the next day, has another, over 4,000 meters of climbing again, two Category 1s, a Category 3, a long Category 2 that's probably quite close to being a Category 1, and then an Hors Category climb, a steep one too, Monte du Plateau de Glières, 6 kilometers long at 11.2% average gradient. None of this, by the way, is at high altitude. Nothing goes over 2,000 meters, although Cornet de Rosalind gets pretty close at the start. Everyone's going to be pretty tired at this point. Bearing in mind, there's been no Giro or really a lot of racing beforehand. I know some guys have been training hard and some haven't. Anything could happen on this stage. But do you think, I know you're going to say breakaway again.
I'm going to mix it up a bit though, in the sense that I am going to say breakaway because this one's shouting breakaway at us. We could easily say Alaphilippe because he's won stage like this before. But I think that at this point in the race, we will have seen Lopez lose so much time in GC that Izagirres will be allowed to go for it, and one of the Izagirres will win the stage. I just feel it.
That's a good call. One of these, they've looked good. One of them won that Spanish race, and then your boy, what's your boy's name that came third or second in that stage as well?
Aramburu?
Yeah, you know, they're looking pretty good. Astana are looking really good. Full Sagan, and imagine if they had Vlasov in this Tour de France going for getting into breakaways. That would be insane. But who knows? If Pinot crashes out, it could be Sebastian Reichenbach being put into breakaways. I'm going to agree with you. I agree with you that it'd probably be a breakaway, but I also think there'll be GC action. There's bonus seconds at the top of the Hors category climb. It's 6Ks at 11.2%. That's just calling out for Bernal once again. although it's not at altitude. If Bernal, again, if Ineos are 3-4 minutes behind whoever is leading, Buchmann, Pinot, Martinez, Roglic, if Ineos are behind, they're not happy settling for second place. We saw that in Froome 2018 Giro, and I don't think Bernal is happy with second place either. Could this be a stage similar to the Froome Landis stage where Ineos try to launch someone, Bernal or Carapaz, maybe not so early, but definitely launch him on that climb, that last hard, steep climb?
Could definitely be possible. I do believe that this stage is going to be extremely packed with attacks on the first climb already. Col de Roselon, plenty of GC favorites out of lost time will open up the race really early because it's basically up and down till the finish line. There's no proper plateau section. Maybe 5 kilometers between the third and the second to last climb. Outside of that, it's basically all climbing and downhill. So it's perfect for breakaways. So I expect at least 30 riders to attack on the Col de Roselon because I genuinely feel that we'll see such a big pack of riders attack on the stage. They'll act like it's that F1 start stage they tried. Was it last year or the year before?
Oh, grid position, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that.
I think the break could be so large that this isn't a perfect science. If I was a GC contender, I'd just be trying to you know wear a different colored helmet that day and some different sunglasses and shoes and try and sneak into that breakaway and like I love Kwiatkowski and Amador and co, but as you said, if you're following along the parcours, it's a tooth comb, and I'm not sure how Luke Rowe's gone probably on that first climb. Same with Jumbo Visma, so strong, but yeah, it's just gonna be difficult for teams to control, especially if it's a really large breakaway. But this is really the last place before the individual time trial for people to have their last throw of the dice. I think it's actually a master stroke. Some credit has to go to ASO and the Tour de France. I mean, it's always difficult making a route because you never know how the race is going to actually play out, and the route that you've made, which could encourage attacking, actually turns out to encourage defensive riding because of a few things that change. But the way this is set up before that individual time trial and a transitional stage tomorrow, it's just going to be attacks, and people going for this stage and on GC. So this should be a really exciting stage. So mark it down in your little notebooks. Do you agree?
I certainly agree. And it's basically the last stage that I do expect potential GC action outside of that time trial, indeed, like you said, because the next one is from Bourg-en-Bresse to Champagnol. It is, I think, classified as a flat stage or a hill stage. I think it's classified as a flat. It could be very wrong there, but I think it's a breakaway stage. Sorry, but it's the last
Well,
week. They're gonna try
Christian
it.
Prudhomme does not agree with you. Prudhomme says this is for the sprinters who survive the Alps to seize the opportunity to shine. I don't
I
think
think
so.
it's the kind of stage that at Trentin, Jasper Stuyven, those guys that are not the climbers that can survive hilly stages, that they will try and survive this stage in a breakaway, try and go for it. And Nasgren, I said it before, on a more hilly stage, this one fits him a bit more. I would even dare to say a Tim de Klerk would go into this breakaway, even though he's got Bennett in his team, so that might kind of fuck things up a bit. Outside of that, I've really got no idea how sprinters would be able to keep this one under control, honestly.
Well, I made this case on ITV, and I kind of got laughed at when did the Tour de France preview there, and I said, what happens if Egan Bernal is a minute behind Pinot or Roglic on this, and we're coming into this stage, and he's second, and they've got maybe Carapaz in third. What do Ineos do? Do they just accept not winning the Tour de France and just hope that someone falls down, or do you? My argument was that's not what that organisation is designed for, and not just them. I think Pinot, Buchmann, Jumbo Visma, all these guys are coming to win. This isn't like participation year where people are happy getting second. all these guys have had good results before. They're all here with one goal to win, and I think Ineos won't let the last opportunity to win go begging. And there's enough punchy climbs here where they would have to at least try something. Or do you think that's just insane and it's not nearly hard enough?
I don't know. It depends a lot on how the race is ridden, as we've said quite a few times already. It also depends on who's ahead, because if, for example, Roglic is like 2 minutes behind, 1 minute and a half behind or something, then I would still see him betting on the time trial. While if a Bernal is behind, he most likely will not be betting on the time trial. So I don't know. I feel like it's gonna be depending on who's ahead and such to see what happens on the stage.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see. I think someone will make a mistake here. I think what someone on GC will think that they're going to gain more time on their time trial than or have a better time trial than they actually do, and they'll be ruining not at least trying something on this stage. Or maybe really you gotta lay your cards out on the stage before. But we finally got to it. Stage 20. This is one of the stages I'm most excited for. The only individual time trial in the entirety of the Tour de France, because ASO are sick of Froome and Wiggins and Grant Thomas and Tom Dumoulin style riders. 36.2 Ks, finishing on La Planche de Bellefille, not at altitude. It's 30 kilometers of pretty much flat, slightly undulating terrain, but obviously they'll be going over 40 kilometers an hour for the first 30 kilometers, and then 6 kilometers at 8.5% mountaintop finish. Who's your pick for stage win?
I'd expect a good time trial outside of the GC favorites as well, from riders like a Caruso or a Bilbao, naming two Bahrain riders by accident there, but
Yeah,
they're always
Bilbao,
on,
not bad.
on time trials to the end of the Grand Tours. What do you say? Sorry.
I said, yeah, Pelo Bilbao, underrated time trials, especially for someone we think of as a Spanish, more of a Spanish climber. He's actually not bad, especially in a mixed time trial like this. He just won the Spanish National Championships individual time trial. Actually, making myself sound like a genius. He won it 4 days ago. I didn't know that, by the way.
Next to that, I believe that GC wise, yeah, this is obviously the ultimate ending. The person that does well here will most likely also make a big move in GC, because this is a stage on which you can make serious gaps happen. If, for example, Roglic or something ends up winning the stage and taking yellow, that's one hell of a way to finish it. But it's gonna be interesting. We've got Pogacar that we haven't spoken about much. His form is a bit, well, I'm a bit unsure about his form, and that's why I haven't mentioned him too much. But he could be pretty amazing. Last year, his form pre the Vuelta was not extraordinary either. He was decent at Algarve, being great there, but like it was a long while until we had the Vuelta then last year, on which he started off pretty mediocre and eventually just grew into the race and eventually won 3 stage wins that, if I say so myself, I predicted every single one of those before the Vuelta even started. Nonetheless, I would like to address this sort of France more in his ideal. And if I recall correctly, Pogacar is Slovenian and C time trial and not Roglic, so he can certainly time trial quite well. I'm gonna say that this stage is gonna be won by Tadej Pogacar.
That's a good call. I mean, we saw the Slovenian National Championships individual time trial. I presume most of you have seen my video about it. Pogacar famously did a bike change from a road bike to a TT bike midway through the stage. That ITT Champs was the mirror of this stage. It had a climb in the first half. Or no, well, the first 2/3 of the time, so 20 minutes out of the 32 minutes was climbing, and then he changed over to a TT bike for the last 10 to 12 minutes of that stage. And he beat Roglic. Now, Roglic, not his best day. he wasn't on great form, I don't think. When you look at the power data, Roglic didn't change his bike. Will they have learnt from that? Bora Hansgrohe at Sibiu Tour, they had an uphill time trial quite steep. They used TT bikes, Conrad and Gregor Mühlberger. I think that wasn't the best choice there either. I think Tom Dumoulin is going to win this stage. I think he's going to win it by 20 seconds, at least 25 seconds. I think the undulating time trials like this suit the climbing time trial specialists almost more than the flat ones. Maybe not more, but I don't think the climb helps riders like Bernal and Quintana that much, as opposed to just a pure climb TT on a road bike. I think I've already stated this in my video when I did the Slovenian Chance video. I think it's going to be mathematically better to do a bike change because there is a significant speed difference between the climb and the first 30 kilometers. The first 30 kilometers will be well over 40 k's an hour, and La Planche de Belfi is, it's quite steep, and there's some there's some parts over 10% in that climb. Looking at the profile now, there's a 13% pinch in the first kilometer. There's a 20% pinch at the end. Do you really think? I don't think it's a good idea for Quintana and Bernal to be wrestling a TT bike in that. So what's brilliant about this is we're going to see someone fuck it up completely. We've seen with bike changes. Yeah, Romain Bardet already knows. But it's going to be a great talking point. Do you think everyone should bike change or no?
The thing is, I honestly am not really known into the expertise of whether a bike change is worth it or not. Haven't done the calculations. You're more of the mad guy here, so that's why I'm gonna leave this one to you.
Yeah, I think I'll do calculations. I'll do a video pleading my case before the stage, but I think when you calculate the weight savings, I mean, sure, if the World Tour teams can get their TT bikes to 6.8 kilos, it'd be my guess, but I don't think they can. So, especially not the Romain Bardet's factor. But yeah, I think Dumoulin wins this. I don't know about Roglic. Something about the Tour de France in 2018 still scares me in the back of my mind. That time trial where he lost 90 seconds to Chris Froome, and Chris Froome was on his last legs, at the end of that Tour de France. Something about that, yeah.
Next to that, I've got just a bad feeling about the stage he even won in the Giro last year to San Marino. The time trial where Campenaerts would have won if he didn't have a puncture, which says a lot considering the last portion of that stage was so extremely uphill into San Marino that I've got the feeling that, yeah, I've said it before, I've got a feeling that he's traded in a bit of his time trial abilities into the skill of climbing, and that might cost him the stage win here.
Are you sure it was a puncture that Campenaerts had? I thought he tried a bike change and they stuffed it up. I reckon this is the one where Campenaerts, yeah, he had a bike change and they
Really?
stuffed it up because the mechanic put him in like the 5312 gear, and it was on
Wow.
the uphill where he changed to the road bike and he couldn't pedal. And Bradley Wiggins, I agreed with him. He said that guy, the Soigneur, whoever, should be fired.
Okay. Case corrected.
It's going to be interesting to see what people do in the Planche de Belfi. I love that they've put this here. It reminds me of when Cadel Evans won the Tour de France in 2011 when he beat Schleck handily in that time trial to win by it was a very small margin. I think it makes the race more exciting, and it's going to cause DSs and riders a lot of sleepless nights because if Pinot's wearing yellow, he's looking comfy. He's looking fantastic. He even they got Jumbo Visma on the ropes in, say, stage 18. Roglic looking vulnerable. Pino's he's in yellow. He's 90 seconds ahead of Roglic, and he just rests on his laurels and rides it in and doesn't really take advantage of it too much. And then loses the Tour de France by 5 seconds because Roglic storms in the time trial, or Dumoulin or whoever. That would be fantastic theatre. So hopefully something like that happens. I'm sure there'll be heartbreak for Pinot at some point. But, okay, that was stage 20. Any other last thoughts on stage 20, Benji?
I don't know. I've got the feeling that it's going to be very decisive, but I've also got the feeling that the stage beforehand will already make a solid gap. So it's gonna be curious. A lot of gaps can be created on a time trial, so I don't know. I've got the feeling that it's going to do a lot when it comes to the top three more than potentially the winner, in the sense that there's gonna be a lot of fight for the second and third spot as well. And yeah, I said it. Pogacar is my guy for this one.
Fair shout. I mean, he beat Roglic in a similar sort of time trial. All right, stage 21. We can do this quickly. We all know it. Champs-Élysées, 122 Ks. My pick's Caleb Ewan. Same as last year's winner. Who's your pick?
I am going to say that the winner of this one is going to be a rider that has said that he wants to go for this. And I'm also basically saying this because I'm Belgian
Oh, I
and
know.
I'm going to shout Wout van Aert for this one. I have to. But as an addition, I would love to have someone just attack away in that stupid tunnel in the last kilometer and a half. It won't work, but
Vinokurov. Alexander Vinokurov special.
just like Lampard tried as well. And if I have to name someone from that, it will be someone at the Koenig that will try that. So it's either Stibar or Bennett. No, not Bennett. Asgren to do that. So maybe those two. I don't know. Potentially someone of Trek Segafredo, like a Turns and a Stuyven, could do those crazy attacks. But then again, they're basically the sprinters for that team. So, well, Mes Pedersen potentially as well after what he's shown previously in August. But I don't know. I hope that someone wins on the Champs Elysees in the next 20 years with an attack in the last 2 kilometers. But it sure doesn't look like it.
Hopefully, my biggest gripe, and I'm gonna this is our podcast, so I'm gonna get on my soapbox here. I think if someone is within 5 or 10 seconds on GC in the Tour de France, they should try something in stage 21 and screw the tradition. But it probably never happened. But that's what I would do if I was a director. I'd tell people to attack the other GC rider on Champs Elysees.
Honestly, me as
Um,
well, mainly because I feel like a race is still a race. And also, as an addition, it would be really amazing to just have them take pictures at the start of the race, drinking some champagne, and towards the end of the stage, be like, fuck it, I'm attacking.
yeah,
Just take the yellow
exactly.
jersey.
They go back to the team car to do a photo shoot. Like Sky did, and you just attack them. I would do it, but I'm a
I would do
terrible
it as well,
person.
but I'm a
So
terrible person too.
we're 2 hours in. People want to actually know what are our predictions. Let's start with the easy stuff, or the easier stuff first. Young rider classification. My pick is Danny Martinez.
Oof, Bernal's still eligible, right?
Does he? If Bernal wins the tour, does he forfeit the youth?
Well, technically not, because he still win the white
No,
jersey.
he wins both. He wins both. He
Yeah.
just doesn't wear both. No, I think Danny Martinez. I think Danny Martinez. I'm very low on Bernal.
I am becoming a bit of a not a fan of Bernal, but I like his personality. He's a kind guy, so I hope he does well. But I am rooting for a surprise in this Tour de France, and Martinez is certainly one of the riders that I've got in my top four for this Tour de France. So a white jersey would fit him, and that might cost Bernal that white jersey and a good GC.
I just think sometimes when you're the second GC favorite and you have to work really hard at defending attacks or trying to actually win the Tour de France, that energy expenditure can cost you even the podium. So that's the sort of cost or trade back of having to go for the actual trying to win. Whereas Danny Martinez will just ride his own race, pick his opportunities where he has to, zero pressure. Pogacar is obviously up there as well. He's probably the third name in there. I think he's going to lose a lot of time. I think he's going to show. I think he's going to have a good showing in this tour, but I think he's going to lose a lot of time on one of the stages.
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I've got the feeling that I might actually change that to Bogacar now. Yeah, I will. Bogacar is my youth
Yeah, yeah.
jersey.
We got to have different picks. You can tell we didn't rehearse this beforehand.
Yeah, I'm gonna go for Pogacar. You for Martinez.
Okay. I'm Martinez, your Pogacar, and currently Egan Bernal is being given a 60% chance of winning that by the betting markets. The mountains classification, Julien Alaphilippe is currently the favourite for that. He's being given about a 16% chance of winning. It's always incredibly difficult to pick because it just depends on what breaks go, etc. But Names are Alaphilippe, Bardet, Roglic, De Gent, Warren Buggy, Adam Yates. Tim Wellens is off the board now because he had that accident just before Tavade Formula. I'm going with Alaphilippe.
I have to do another pick. I believe that Philippe has a big chance, but I am going to name a name that could potentially do it, but he's most likely not going to go for it, and that is Mark Hershey. I believe that he's got the punch to take those sprints, and I believe that he's shown that he can climb somewhat with the better breakaway riders during the Dauphiné, but he did that in the peloton group then. Yeah, I believe he can do it, but he just has to get the green light for it and be motivated to do it as well.
All right, we'll get to your local bookmaker Benji because you get pretty good odds on Mark Hirschi. I reckon you could get 150 to 1, 200 to 1. Points classification. Now, I'm almost more interested in this than the yellow jersey just because of. I know that's a lie. I'm lying to you all. First, second podcast, I'm lying to the audience. I'm not as excited about it, but I am pretty excited about it. I'm more excited about it than previous years where it was kind of just a formality. Peter Sagan is obviously the favourite for it, but not as heavy as you might expect. He was a heavy favourite for it last year, but this year he's only being given about a 40% chance. No, sorry, 55% chance, 57% chance of winning it by the betting markets. Sam Bennett's the second favourite. He's been given a 20% chance, and then Wout van Aert is third favourite. What do you think of just even that order, Bennett over Wout van Aert?
I believe that's mainly because Wout van Aert has been said as destined to be domestique. I believe that Kruijswijk's disappearance has made him more important to the train of Roglic, so that he might even get less freedom right now. I hope that he gets his freedom because, yeah, he should deserve it, kinda. Outside of that, Peter Sagan obviously has to be a name that you name for this. You can't just not name him for Green. He is the legend, the Hulk of Green. And yeah, I believe that Peter Sagan is obviously going to have a big chance of Green just because people sometimes tend to say that Peter Sagan will win it anyway, so we shouldn't really go for it. Because that's sometimes how it has been in previous years. While there have been riders that could have done at least something to potentially get something out of it. What do you think about it?
Will Sam Bennett even finish this Tour de France? I mean, there's some hard stages in there, but they're not that. But they're not that long. They're not that long either. So there's not that many over. Well, there's only one stage really over 200 kilometers long. But I still think I'm going to be watching stage one extremely closely. If Jumbo Visma don't even let Wout van Aert lead out, contest the sprint, I'll be betting very, very heavily on Peter Sagan, because that'll be an indication of really how seriously they're taking not letting Wout van Aert work in it. Not letting Wout van Aert ride for his own chances. But yeah, it's going to be. It still should be Sagan favourite, and he's still my pick for the green jersey.
When it comes to the yellow jersey, now the most important crown on the Tour de France, the Maillot Jaune, who do you think is going to win the Tour de France 2020?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to not look at. I'm trying to because I only think in value and betting odds. I don't really think in absolutisms and certainties. Well, for full transparency, I've got $6,000 against Roglic right now. That's not going to be the case at the start of the Tour de France. That's just a price movement thing. But that is because I'm not as bullish on Roglic's chances as maybe the public was at least a week ago. I really want to see. I don't even know if he'll start, but I really want to see how he looks on that stage two. I think after stage two, I can give you a really firm answer on who I think will win. I think Pinot for the podium is just an absolute lock. I think Pinot is the second strongest rider in this race. I think the parcours suits him better than Bernal. I think Ineos will not be as strong this year as they have in previous years as a team as a whole. Bringing Carapaz in from the Giro is just, it reeks of something off at Ineos and not the best preparation. But if Roglic is healthy, I think he wins comfortably, to be honest. And if he's not, I think Tom Dumoulin wins and Pinot is second and Bernal third, or even Pogacar third. I think Buchmann is actually quite injured. I don't think Buchmann will do well, unfortunately. But yeah, my pick is Roglic, but if he's injured, Tom Dumoulin.
I'm going to be a bit more harder towards the spectacle of cycling, and I am going to see this race as Ineos, which is the First Order. They look like those guys from Star Wars. And we've got Jumbo Visma, the Killer Wasps, fighting each other. But I think it's gonna be someone else coming out on top because I feel like that would make the race a lot more entertaining to watch. So I kind of hope for the most entertaining part, and therefore I will name a few riders that are in my top three, and then name the person that I think is gonna win it out of those. The riders that are in my top three in no particular order are Buchmann, Pogacar, and Bernal. I think that Pogacar is going to win the Tour de France 2020 ahead of Buchmann. I think Buchmann's going to be in yellow before the ITT, and Pogacar will overtake him there. I don't know what will happen to Roglic in the meanwhile, why he's off the podium for me, but I don't know why. I'm of the opinion that Roglic and the strength his team has shown in the Dauphiné closes down mountain stages to make it less entertaining for the viewer a tiny bit. That's not their goal, but that's a consequence, unfortunately, which makes me hope that their strategy of keeping the race closed fails a bit so that we see open attacks and a really just a spectacle in the last week. And that is where I think Roglic would collapse if he does not have the support because
He's not good at making decisions. I don't think he's a good. I don't think he's a good racer.
I'm not sure what you mean with racer. Do you mean like as in strategic thinking during the race or
Yeah, just making an on the spot decision without teammate support to set pace for him about do I chase, do I not chase? We saw that in the Giro last year. I think in 1 day races, different kettle of fish, but I think I'm not sure I trust Roglic to make the best decision. I think his decision is usually I'm the strongest, mash pedals, or sit behind train.
yeah, I believe it as well, and therefore I think that Pogacar is going to win the Tour de France ahead of Buchmann, and the third person will be Bernal.
I mean, yeah, I think it will be open. If Roglic hadn't crashed at Dauphiné, I'd just tell you one name, Roglic, and I wouldn't have had to have spoken for 5 minutes. But that's not what happened. So I'm more excited for this Tour de France than I have been in a long, long time, just because it's so open. Yes, there's been crashes and injuries, etc. But I can't wait to watch it. This year has just been so shit for everybody. Coronavirus. I can't believe the tour is even happening. Some people think it shouldn't. I think we've been talking for a long time, so we're not going to talk about the corona stuff. We're just going to assume the tour is going ahead. Power of positive thinking. But if you guys liked our picks, hit us up on Instagram or comment on the YouTube video for this, or maybe even in the review, the 5-star review you give. Who do you think we're insane? Do you think we're high? The picks we've had. I mean, do you think me saying Pino on the podium is out of the question? I don't think it's that crazy a selection, to be honest. But yeah, I think the one thing we can all agree on is no one really knows what's going to happen. No one knows whether the teams will be strong enough to control all these hilly stages, what condition these guys will be in. It's just so uncertain, and that's what I'm so excited about because we're going to have to make decisions day by day. But yeah, what are you last thoughts, Benji, on this tour?
Last thoughts is that it's one of the most open tours that I've recently experienced, and therefore I do believe that it's going to be a spectacle. I hope that the strategies of both Ineos and Jumbo collapse so that we see a massacre happen like the last stage in the Dauphiné this year, because that was just action from start to finish. And that was because the Jumbo train collapsed, let's be honest. So, yeah, I am looking forward to it. I hope that it is a wonderful race. I hope we don't have any corona issues like we just said. Stay positive. There's plenty of potential issues there, but yeah, let's stay positive. I sincerely hope that we can do this as safe and entertaining as possible because that is basically what we need to make this a wonderful Tour de France.
Okay, you got Pogacar. I got Roglic slash 1B Dumoulin. I'm having a little get out of jail card there in case Roglic is injured. Remember, guys and girls, we will be making a podcast, a recap every day for this Tour de France. Straight after the stage is finished, we're going to get on the phone to each other and do a stage recap. Not as long as this. I know this is obscenely long, but we got carried away. We agreed to be 75 minutes. We're nearly at double that. But come on, Tour de France is once a year. I didn't even know it'd be happening. Give us a break. The recaps will be 30 to 40 minutes long. Make sure you subscribe on the relevant platform that you're listening on to get notified about them. They'll be going up like 2.5 hours, 3 hours after the stage, if not earlier. And follow us on Instagram at the Lanterne Rouge, Benji Naesen, or check out our YouTube channels if you haven't. They're all in the description. And make sure you guys comment as well. Let us know, what do you want to hear from our recaps? What do you want to hear from our podcast? We want to hear your thoughts, whether it's on the Discord, Benji's Discord, on my Discord, or on Instagram, or wherever. We've got my maths and analytical skills. We've got Benji's in-depth knowledge of just about every rider in the pro peloton. Thanks for listening to the Tour de France preview from the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast with Benji Naesen. Thanks for joining, Benji.